Good evening and welcome to Sacramento County's first virtual redistricting workshop. Today is Monday, June 21st, and we are starting at 6:07 p.m. I am Courtney Bailey Canellis. I'm the Registrar of Voters for Sacramento County, and I have the pleasure to be hosting our very first workshop tonight, where we will be asking the public to weigh in on the redrawing of our supervisorial district boundaries. Before we get started, before we get started with our official announcements on how this workshop will be conducted, I would like our consultants at NDC to introduce themselves. NDC, or National Demographics Corporation, was selected through a competitive bidding process to assist Sacramento County with the redrawing of the supervisorial district boundaries based on the most recent decennial census data. While final district boundaries will be approved by the current Board of Supervisors, it will be NDC's responsibility to collect public comments and to come up with the draft maps and proposals for the public to review. NDC, would you please introduce yourselves to our community?
Yes, Courtney, thank you very much. My name is Doug Yoakum. I'm a consultant with National Demographics Corporation, and I live in Elk Grove, and I will be helping you all get involved in redistricting this year. With me also is our president, Dr. Douglas Johnson.
Good evening. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Courtney. It's my pleasure to be with you and looking forward to working with all of you. And just so folks know, we've got a big team working on this. With us watching tonight is Justin Levitt, who's our vice president. So we are all excited to be working with the county and looking forward to hearing what the community has to say.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being with us tonight. And we're excited to see what you have to present on and to see how the public can get involved with this process. Before we get started with the official announcements, I would also like to acknowledge the County Redistricting Project team, which includes our County Department of Technology, the Clerk of the Board's office, our Public Information Department, and our County Executive team. It really does take a team to put all this together, so appreciate everyone working together so we can make sure the public has every opportunity to participate. I'm going to go ahead and start with the basic rules and announcements on how we're going to be conducting this meeting tonight. The county is hosting this virtual public workshop to provide an overview of the redistricting process for Sacramento County and give a demonstration of the mapping tools to allow for community input. NDC will be giving a presentation for about 30 minutes, and then we will be opening it up for public comments. Community members can make a comment by phone, or they can also submit written comments that will be posted on our website. You will also see an American Sign Language interpreter on the bottom left corner of your screen at all times. If you are experiencing technical difficulties, please send a text or call the Clerk of the Board's office for assistance at 916-599-0112. You can also send an email to boardclerk@saccounty.net, and staff will contact you and provide assistance. To make a public comment by phone during tonight's presentation, please dial 916-875-2500 and follow the prompts to be placed in the queue. You may be on hold for up to an extended period of time, and your patience is definitely appreciated. I will ask staff to transfer each caller into the workshop, and that caller will have 3 minutes to provide public comment. The chat and the Q&A features in the Zoom will not be available for tonight's presentation. Language interpretation services are available for all languages. Please call the public comment phone line at 916-875-2500, and staff will connect you with a language interpreter. You and the language interpreter will be transferred into the workshop in order to make a comment. Additional time will be given to callers who are using the language interpretation services. Please also be mindful of the time limits for public comment to avoid being interrupted or disconnected. We appreciate your cooperation and thank you in advance for your courtesy and understanding, as it is our goal to give everyone an opportunity to provide input on this redistricting process. To submit a written comment, you can send an email to redistricting@saccounty.net. Alternatively, you can also mail comments to the Clerk of the Board's office at 700 H Street, Suite 2450, Sacramento, California, 95814, and attention it to the Clerk of the Board. All public comments will be included in the redistricting process. Again, we thank you for your understanding and your patience as we go through this first virtual workshop. And without further ado, let's go ahead and turn this over to NDC and let's learn more about redistricting together.
Thank you, Courtney. I'm sharing a PowerPoint that I hope everybody can see at this moment. National Demographics has been working with the county staff and the county supervisors. And jointly, we've come up with a little schedule of what's going to happen for the rest of the year. I'll quickly show you the end of this schedule. The December 15th is the statutory deadline when all counties in California must complete this redistricting process. So we've already started the process. We're here in the middle of it. We're doing this week 2 virtual community workshops, and we thank you all for attending. The next step, each supervisor, along with their staff, is planning in their districts at least one live meeting that we will be publicizing in the near future for each supervisory district. So we'll have at least 5 of those and probably 6 to get public input on redistricting for the County Board of Supervisor seats. You may all know that the census has been delayed this year, so we won't get official data until probably 4 to 6 weeks after the August 15th release of the census data. So the California database will get that together for us, and then we'll be using live data around the 1st of October. So in the middle of October, we placed a deadline in there so that citizens can be ready for the next official board hearing where we'll actually be discussing maps and public input that folks have been sending to us in the form of maps. And then you'll see after that, there's several public hearings where the supervisor will decide what map to adopt. Very quickly, we'd like to tell you what the law is regarding redistricting so that if and when you do submit a map, you can comply with these laws as best you can. Each of the 5 districts must be equal in population. We're estimating that the districts probably will need around 307,000 people each in Sacramento County. These districts that we eventually adopt must be compliant with the Federal Voting Rights Act, meaning it cannot discriminate against a minority group within the county, and we cannot split or combine a group in ways that would take away their opportunity to elect a representative of their choice. Now, the California law is quite specific this year. This is something new, and it requires the district to be geographically contiguous. In other words, they have to be connected. It requires that we not divide neighborhoods and what are called communities of interest, which we will discuss in a minute. And to the best of our abilities, we have to keep cities and what are called census designated places together within the districts. Just an example, Elk Grove is a city, Citrus Heights is a city, Orangevale is a census designated place, a CDP, and places like Wilton are CDPs. The districts must follow easily identifiable boundaries, such as freeways, major highways, rivers, things of that nature, so that citizens can easily understand where the lines are for the districts. And finally, the districts have to be compact. And by that, they cannot bypass one large group of people to get to a more distant group of people. And the only specific prohibition in state law is that the districts cannot favor or discriminate against a political party. Now, we've listed here for you all and for the supervisors other traditional redistricting principles. These are things that are allowed to be considered and are not specifically prohibited. You can minimize voters who are shifted to different election years. As you may know, there are 3 supervisors up in one year, two supervisors up in another year. To the extent possible, we like to not switch large number of voters between a district that will have an election in 2 years versus a district that has an election in 4 years. We've also placed in here the respect for voters' choice. In other words, continuity in office, that there will be one incumbent in each district. And we will endeavor not to put together incumbents two incumbents or more in one district. We may also consider future population growth, in that one district may have more people in it or less people in it based on a future estimate of growth in that district, and the district next to it might have a few more people. And basically, you can preserve the core of the existing districts, which kind of respects what we've talked about earlier, which is putting one member of the board in each district. So what we'd like to do in these hearings that are coming up in each individual districts or the workshops is tell us what your neighborhood is and what are the geographic boundaries of that neighborhood. And it's a pretty open definition of what a neighborhood is. Does it have natural dividing lines such as highways, roads, rivers? Is it an area around a park or a school or other landmarks within your neighborhood? Tell us what you think your neighborhood is, and then tell us whether you think it should be together in one particular district or another. Then we have communities of interest, and that has a specific definition in the law. And that definition is, do the people in an area have a shared issue or characteristic around a social or economic interest? It can be something that's impacted by county policy, such as traffic or housing development. And what we're looking for is tell us your community's story. And can you put boundaries around your district to tell us where it is in the community? And then tell us whether this community would be benefited from being included with a single district, or would it benefit from being in more than one district? Now we'd like to show you what we call public mapping and map review tools. And they're on the redistricting website for Sacramento County now. And you can use them for different things based on what you all are looking for. You can use it to learn about your own community. There will be demographic considerations put on the map so you can look at them. You can use them to review draft maps as they come in. You can use them to draw your individual neighborhood. We also have paper and Excel-based tools so that people who are not comfortable with computer technology can use a paper map and draw their community, or actually draw a plan, a redistricting plan on paper. And we will look at that and use it as part of our considerations. And then we have a very powerful draw your own map tool, and you can draw districts for the entire county and submit them as we go along. So now I'm going to try to show you what tools are available on the county website. I'm hoping you see a picture of downtown Sacramento. We call this a story map. And this tool, as I said, is available on the Sacramento County Redistricting website. We have the current districts all shaded in different colors. And
Doug, this is Doug Johnson. We're still seeing the PowerPoint slide. So why don't you just stop sharing and try sharing again with the screen. There you go.
Is it there?
Oh, so you got to share screen now.
Is it there now?
I see the PowerPoint slide. Can you alt tab to the browser? Or click on that. Yeah.
Did it work?
No. When you hit share screen, don't choose the PowerPoint, choose your screen, the picture of you and the interpreter. There we go.
All right. As I was saying, we have a map of Sacramento County with the 5 districts on it. They're colored differently. You can take those lines off. And what you see there is the outlines of the census designated places in the cities. And what we'd like to show you here is you can bring up demographic information. You should be seeing downtown and north of Thomas now. And this is a depiction of the concentrations of African-American citizen voting age population in those areas. You can see Del Paso Heights, downtown Sacramento. There's Oak Park. And you can also see in South Sacramento, this is Meadowview. So when you see a map online that you'd like to compare or look to see how it affects your community, you can use this tool. Okay, we call this a simple review map. Let me try to get it on screen for you. Couple of things I'd like to show you on this map, if I can get to them. If you click on the upper left, you can put an address in here and locate any street or place in the county. And then if you're in there, you can zoom out. I clicked an address in the Thomas area. Again, this tool can be used for reviewing maps. But unfortunately, I cannot get to the layers because there's a thing from Zoom on it, and I just can't use it. So we'll have to work on this map later.
Doug, you don't have to switch. You don't have to stop sharing each time. Just switch screens.
Okay, I'll try to get better. Can we all see the simple map drawing tool in front of us now?
Yes.
Excellent. This is for folks who are not as comfortable as I am with computer technology. You can download this page of map of the county from the website. There's also a map on the website that you can see in the lower left here. It displays a little more clearly what cities and what places are. And then on the right, this map shows you how many people are located in each of what we call this population unit. So then you can draw a map of your own around these population units and add them up yourself and submit that as your suggestion for how to draw a plan in Sacramento County. Or you can use this tool. It's called Map plus Excel. So if you're comfortable with Excel and you want to draw a map around certain areas, you can use the unit number and then place it down here in an Excel sheet. Just tell what district you want each population unit to be in, and Excel will do the math for you. And just keep in mind that we are trying to get to around 307,000 people for each of the 5 districts in Sacramento County. Now I'd like to show you District R, which is a simple drawing tool that we have on the website. when I tried this earlier today, it took a little while to come up. So let's see how we do. This is a tool where you can easily draw your neighborhood and submit it to us and tell us, this is what I think my neighborhood is, and this is how I think we should keep it together, or why. So I think the county has now successfully come up on my screen. I'm going to zoom into Elk Grove here.
Doug, we do still see the PowerPoint on our screen.
Okay. There you go.
Am I having any success?
Now you need to share screen and just share the where it says screen, where it's the picture of you and the interpreter.
Can't get there.
There we go.
All right, I will attempt to bring District R up once more. Like I said, it was having a little going a little slowly earlier.
Yep.
Is the county map here?
Yep.
Okay, I will zoom into Elk Grove. I'm going to do my best because all my drawing tools are covered at this point by something from Zoom. So on the upper right, there's a little hand that you can use, and that hand moves you around, moves your map around for you. Then there's a paint brush right here on the right-hand side. And what you can do is this paintbrush will simply highlight an area on the map as you paint it by holding down your mouse. This is what I'm doing right now. But what I'm doing is drawing my community. I'm painting all the areas. And unfortunately, there was something in there that I don't want. So I click on this tool, which is an eraser, and I erase what I don't want. And I was going to show you how to get the demographic information in here, but I can't do that because there's something covering it at this point on Zoom. But here's how you can draw community. And if you use the tools over here, you can copy the URL of this community and you can send it to us on the redistricting website. So now I'm going to get out of this. And can't get back to my PowerPoint. All right. The final tool that hopefully I can successfully show you here. Try to get, all right. We call this Maptitude Online Redistricting. It's a very powerful tool, and it can be used most conveniently to draw an entire plan for your county.
Doug, it's not showing you. Oh, there you go. There, it just came
How
up.
we
Perfect.
doing?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. I'm going to draw a new map. This is the map of the whole county. Then the tools over here, you can use this plus sign to zoom in. Let me show you first. This application works in several different languages. We have English, Spanish, Portuguese, Vietnamese, Korean, and Mandarin Chinese. And in order to help you navigate, you can, the first thing you should probably do is go into tips, and it will show you what each part of the application does and how to use it. So I will show you first over here on the left. Zoom into an area on the map using this little plus tool. I'm going to zoom into South Natomas and the Sacramento River area. And basically what you see in front of you is a map, and it has all the census blocks on it. But what it's not doing is it hasn't assigned it to any district yet. So what you do is you build a new district, and the source is all of the current blocks that are unassigned. And you can use it several ways. You can do it either by point. You can select a block this way. This will be very slow when you're looking for 307,000 people. So what you should do is draw a shape. And I'll just draw a shape here. So everything you touch with this shape tool is going to be included in your selection. So I've selected this entire area of South Natomas and the Garden Highway area. And you'll see it has about 14,000 people in it. So you're going to need a lot more. But this is how you use this tool to draw a district in Maptitude. At the end of your process, see if I can do this. Well, I like what I've done, so I'm going to click on the check tool. And I'm going to assign it a district number. And if I can find it. I'll go back to the original map. You can see that district I've drawn. And then I can use these tools over here to share my plan. I can email it to a friend who I have my email address for. I can share it with anybody I'm working with. Any of the plans that are on the website that are already submitted. Or in this case, I can submit this plan but I can't submit it yet because it's not done. All right. So we at NDC would love to hear your thoughts about redistricting and what it is, how it is you'd like redistricting to go in this county this year. You can go to the website, you can call with questions, or you can send an email. So Courtney, thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Doug. Really appreciate the overview of the different options and mapping tools that we have available to be able to submit comments. So while obviously, as Doug went over, the key here is to make sure that those districts are have an evened out population as much as possible. There is that additional criteria that we do have to consider when we are drawing our district boundaries. And that's really where we need our community input. We don't want to separate any communities, especially as we draw those district boundaries, redraw them to even out the populations. So this is really where we look to the public and look for all of your help as well. So as the last screen showed, to make public comments over phone, we have a number to call in, 916-875-2500. And we also have a few questions in the chat. So I'm gonna, or not in the chat, in the Q&A portion. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and go over those first and then have you all, NDC, be available to answer the questions regarding this process, how the public can participate, and then we'll go to the phone lines. So let me go ahead and pull those up first. Oh, and actually there's one question that starts with, how can we tell where the 5 supervisors live so that we draw boundaries that keep them separate? You know, that's a really good question, Kat. And we've actually talked about this a lot back and forth in terms of, do we share that information or do we not? Will it look like we're trying to draw boundaries around them? Will it look like we're intentionally not drawing boundaries around them? So we've had a lot of back and forth on that particular subject. So the responses, and NDC, please feel free to chime in, but the response is that right now we are not going to be releasing the information or even general areas of where the supervisors live, because we don't want that to influence the public when they submit their boundaries. And then we have, NDC, did you want to add anything to that?
No, that's the policy we've all decided on, and we will go from there.
Okay. And then there's another question that, who sets the boundaries for each individual population group shown on the district mapping tool? When were these current boundaries set? To what extent are past boundaries followed to set current boundaries? I might have said that wrong. For current boundaries that change from the earlier boundary, what are specific reasons for the change? So it looks like, I think, Mr. Johnson, I think you're providing a response on that one.
Happy to. I'm not sure if they're referring to the current existing supervisorial districts, which Doug Yoakum showed on many of those maps. Those were adopted by the Board of Supervisors 10 years ago. They may also be referring to the population units on the paper maps, in which case those are for the smaller, what are called census designated places or unincorporated areas. Those are just kept intact and shown whole. For the larger cities and the entirely unincorporated areas, those are showing census block groups and census tracts within each city or in the unincorporated area. So those were drawn by the Census Bureau.
Got it. Thank you. And yeah, I think, you know, it's important to remember that, you know, for the current boundaries, where we're going to be following that criteria that's outlined in the Fair Maps Act first, in terms of what we consider when we're looking at those current boundaries, and then those other sort of typical redistricting principles are something that we can consider after we look at that main criteria first. So that's important to note that. And then another question before we go to the phone lines, to what extent is the lack of diversity a factor in setting boundaries, including all the economic, racial, ethnic, gender, or other factors considered in labeling population groups? I don't know if I understand the question.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Yeah, I think I would actually reverse it and say, as Doug Yoakum talked about in the criteria, the Voting Rights Act says where there is a large Latino, Asian American, or African American neighborhood, we can't divide that neighborhood in a way that dilutes their voting strength. All the other socioeconomic factors that he showed can factor into how we define communities of interest, and could play into and the law says after the Voting Rights Act and after contiguity, then we try to keep those communities of interest together.
Yeah, and and I think with the next question we have on how do we plan to convey information with those who are not urban planners? There's a comment, there's a huge digital divide population on how to convey this information in simple terms. And that is absolutely correct. We want to be able to explain why redistricting is important, why we should participate, why it matters to the voters, why it matters to the community in simple terms. And I think that's something we're actually going to be relying on our community partners to help us with, in how to convey this information in simple, plain language formats to get as much interest and feedback as possible, and hopefully not to go over the top on the technical side that might deter people. So we do have a few other options for public comment besides the planning tools that we'll go over at the end, community of interest forms. And then also, as Mr. Yoakum mentioned, we do have paper map options that we will do for our in-person workshops. So we are still working on that, and we'll definitely welcome the public comment and questions during this workshop to help us really nail that down. So let's go ahead and we will open up the phone lines, I think right now, and we will start receiving public comment, public input. So if you can go ahead and transfer in the first call. Again, the number is 916-875-2500, and you will have 3 minutes to make your public comment or ask your question. So please go ahead and transfer in the first call.
We have one caller and we're getting them transferred through.
Wonderful. Thank you, Flo.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful clerk of the board's office. I'm trying out for clerk of the board tonight. It's a tough job. Flo does an amazing job. We're very lucky to have her. So, and again, that number to make your comment or question. Sometimes saying a question is easier than me trying to read it off the Zoom. So please feel free to call in 916-875-2500.
Courtney, that was a test call. We were making sure that the phone lines were working. As of right now, we do not have any public comments.
No public comments. Okay, let me go back to the Q&A and see if we got anything in here. Okay, so another question I think for NDC to respond to. Is any voter registration data considered to identify micro or macro, quote unquote, communities of interest, population groups? If not considered, why isn't it considered?
Voter registration data is not relevant and is not used while drawing district lines in the county. We will be drawing them strictly on population basis. And as I stated earlier, we'll be looking at factors to make sure that we are not violating the Voting Rights Act. And to the extent possible, we will be keeping communities of interest, cities, and census places together.
Right, so first
So voter
prioritize.
registration data is not used in redistricting in the county.
Right, right. So we're first really making sure we follow the Federal Voting Rights Act. Then, evening out those populations to be as equitable as possible. Then going into the criteria in the Fair Maps Act, and that is what we consider using the decennial census data. Okay. Any other questions or anyone join the phone queue?
We do not have any callers at this moment.
We don't have any callers. Okay. Well, if we don't have any callers and I'm not seeing any more in the Q&A, then I think we'll go ahead and just do a little discussion about how to still participate. Of course, this is our first virtual workshop, and I appreciate your patience as we work out some of the kinks of this virtual atmosphere. But we still want to hear from you. We still need your input. We need your input in terms of how you want to see this process, your input on how to engage our community, and your input on actually identifying those communities of interest. So thank you for being here as we do that. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and show you our website that has some more information, including our community of interest form. So let's see here. Okay, hopefully everyone can see my screen. And we have our wonderful redistricting website that has a lot of great information, including what is redistricting, where it has a lot of information on what the process is, why is it important, and how the public can participate. And something that we hope will make it kind of more plain language, easy to understand, is our new revised communities of interest form, where our community can actually talk about what their community of interest is, why it's important, and why it should be considered by our demographers when drawing the draft maps to propose to our Board of Supervisors. So this community of interest form is testimony that we ask anyone to be able to provide to us. If you live here, even if you own a business here, we want to hear from you. What is a community of interest? Well, it's your community. It could be as small as your block. It could be those that participate in the same school or sporting events. And I think that's really important to identify, because as we know, depending on where you are, we can have very different communities of interest. And whether it's socioeconomic, whether it's county services or county policy, we want to know what that means to you. Why is a community of interest important? Well, it's really important to make sure that, one, as mentioned before, we don't break up communities of interest to dilute any voting power that those communities might have, and to make sure that we do consider those, especially those historically underrepresented, that we look at those, consider those when we're redrawing our district boundaries. Remember, the goal is to even out the number of residents in each district. And so what that means for a voter, what that means for the supervisor districts moving forward, well, some might see large changes, some might see small changes. It's really hard to say. It's important to note that the mapping tools right now too are based on estimated data. The final data, which will come late September that we're expecting, will have the real deal data, but we wanted our community to have an idea of how to use the tools, get familiar with them now, and still work on defining the communities of interest. Because of the delay of information, the process is going to move very fast. So we want to try and make sure our community knows how to provide input so that when the time comes, we can easily use the tools, submit our comments, and review those public hearings for the draft maps when they're brought to the Board of Supervisors. So this form is a fillable form. where you can provide your information. It prompts you with certain ideas on what to think about with your community together, who lives there, the housings in common, services in common, social networks, language networks, parks, churches, all of those things that we want to look at. There's also an area to put for your geographic boundaries for what you feel your neighborhood or your community of interest is. Then you can also share how your community is similar to the following neighborhoods or how they're different from the following neighborhoods. And I always like to think of, that area we have of Southland Park, Curtis Park, Oak Park, Tahoe Park. How are those neighborhoods, how are those communities of interest alike? How are they different? And those are the sort of things that we want to take into consideration to, again, make sure that we keep those communities of interest as whole as much as possible while we're looking at the other criteria in the Fair Maps Act. So these forms can be emailed to redistricting@saccounty.net. You can also print them out to provide to your own community sponsored events or in-person events. And it does have the link to the website because these will be posted in the public comment area of the website. And we already have some public comments. So this is where if you provide anything in writing, we will have that on our website. And of course, this is the reminder of our redistricting rules and goals. So I'm going to go ahead and check one more time for the phone line. And then I think there's another Q&A. So Flo, any word on the phone line?
Yes, we have a couple of phone callers. And so if you could please transfer the first caller.
Great, thank you.
Hi, caller. Please start with your comments. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Dean Dalvin, and I'm calling. I had several of the questions that were responded to about setting the boundaries, how current is the data that identifies each community in interest and so forth, voter registration data used to identify any small or large size community of interest. My concern is the ideas of all the different breakdowns of individuals by racial, gender, ethnic, economic factors. I'm not quite sure as how all those subgroups are identified and split up into multiple groups. I saw the map that showed individual populations of smaller and smaller groups that we might piece together like a jigsaw puzzle. And that was sort of the intent of these questions, to find out how each of those small groups, those little subset groups, are populated. I understand I'm not referring to prior general maps of the supervisory districts or the city council districts. I'm just concerned about how we can shuffle up all these small pieces of the puzzle to find something that is fair to all the population of not only that specific area, but to the city as a whole. And in fact, the idea of the registration data, it's sort of interesting that, it's sort of what comes, the cart before the horse, insofar as some communities of interest can be possibly identified by voting registration data in whatever group in certain areas. I mean, the old political chestnut, this district votes always blank, and it will always continue to vote blank. And what comes first? The different subgroups within that district, or the district itself influencing how people do vote? So I understand these are very complex, difficult problems that need to be addressed. You're asking for our input. So I'm just wondering to what extent is all this stuff, it's like throwing all the pieces of the puzzle in the air, having it come down, and we got fairness, and we got people expressing their right to vote in a fair way, that the decision that will come from that vote is not a foregone conclusion. Thank you for listening.
Great, thank you very much, Dean. So NDC, do you want to touch on that? I know, we did see a slide where it said you can't consider political parties, but do you want to kind of touch on the other considerations that he was mentioning?
I'll try, Courtney, because what he was talking about is how do these districts come together? And they can come together in several ways. And the way that we're going to do it is we're going to take the input from the public, try to put together a puzzle, a finished puzzle, as the gentleman referred to, that follows the rules that we've just outlined. Again, I want to repeat that no voter registration data will be used, none. So we are simply, when the official census numbers come out, we will be using those numbers to draw, to the extent possible, equally populated 5 districts that match the input from the public that we get. So it's up to the public to decide how they feel they want to express their interest in redistricting, and we'll take that into consideration. I want to repeat that voter registration data will not be used. It will be population data from the United States Census Bureau that will not be released officially until close to October 1st. The data that you see on the tools that are on the website now are population estimates that our company has put together so people can start looking at their communities and telling us what communities of interest they can identify.
Yeah, and Courtney, this is Doug Johnson. I would just agree with that completely and just say the reason we don't use voting registration data isn't NDC's bias in any way. That's the state law. So the state law prohibits the use or it prohibits any decisions driven by favoring or disfavoring a political party. So
got it. Thank you for
the
that
background for that.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. And definitely, as we know, there are limits to voter registration information anyways in terms of demographics. So good to know. Okay, can we transfer in the next caller, please?
Please. Hey, caller, please start with your comments. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. I'm not sure if anybody can hear me.
We can hear you.
Okay, good. My name's Larissa Wells, and I thank you very much for having this. Wait, I have a feedback. But anyway, I thank you very much.
Ms. Wells, may I ask you to mute the meeting? We're going to stop the timer. And could you mute the meeting in the background?
Is that what's going on?
Yes. If you could just mute the meeting in the background while you're talking, then you won't hear the feedback.
I don't see a mute button.
Are you watching it from your computer screen?
I'm sorry?
Were you watching the meeting from a laptop or an iPad?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if you could just mute that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't see it. But what I will do is step away from it. Okay, can you hear me now?
We can hear you. There's still a little bit of feedback. If you're on a laptop, I could help you turn that off. It's in the bottom right-hand corner.
Oh, in the bottom right-hand corner. Okay, one moment, please. I'm really sorry for the delay.
It's okay.
No problem. This is kind of new for all of us, so we're all getting the drill down. So no problem.
Okay, I don't see anything in the lower right-hand corner. I just see audio settings.
Okay, why don't we go ahead and go into another room and then we'll just take it from there.
Got it. Okay, I'll go into another room.
Thank you so much.
All right, are we good now?
Yeah, that's much better.
Okay, awesome. So again, my name is Larissa, and I'm really glad that you're having this. Here's my concern. It was mentioned earlier about not wanting to break up communities or things of that nature. But what I have to say in regards to that is, I was a partnership specialist. I'm an urban planner also, but I was also a partnership specialist for the United States Census, for the 2020 Census. In saying that and going to different neighborhoods, as it was mentioned earlier, there seemed to be certain neighborhoods that had a larger amount of African American people. In doing the census and going around to these different neighborhoods, there were a lot of people who do have that digital divide that I mentioned earlier in the chat. These people also are not, they just don't have the information. And though you may partner with other community-based organizations that are supposed to go in, for example, I don't know much about Sacramento. I'm one of the transplants from the East Bay, and I never received a ballot. I've been here for a year, and I've never received a ballot. I'm in the Art and Arcade area, so it just makes me wonder about other areas that maybe the census wasn't able to get to for the same reasons or whatever. They just didn't know the people were there, whatever the case may be. I'm just a little lost, because what it sounded like to me was that we're just pretty much going to keep everything the same, or the communities will continue to look the same, whereas someone may really, if there's not enough people in this particular district and it kind of moves over into this district that happens to have an overflow of people, what do you choose to do then? You know, somebody may want to be in that or be inclusive in that particular district. Not everybody wants to stay in Oak Park or in that particular area. Not everybody wants to stay, you know, just in certain areas. So I'm just wondering for the inclusiveness of all. And then again, there are just an influx. Apparently, Sacramento County has had an influx of people from the East Bay, and up by 0.5%. Well, 0.5% of 2 million is an awful lot of people. And how does the information get to those people? You know, so I guess I'm just lost, really. I'm just lost. And if I'm lost, and I have the education and the knowledge that I have, just imagine how lost everybody else is going to be. And will a sound decision be able to be made? That's really all that I have to say. Will a sound and equitable decision be able to be made? Now, one last thing that I will say, which is helpful, if maybe those maps could be supplied to these community-based organizations of their particular area, and maybe they can have some public or town halls. I'm not sure how that will happen, but just for the sake of everything that's going on and to be politically correct and all that, well, not politically correct, but according to the federal mandate and according to the state mandate, if everything will be equitable in Sacramento.
Thank you, Ms. Mills. Yeah,
there are
your
more
time
opportunities in one place than there are in another. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, and I think that's a really good point. You know, and I think, and I'll start, but NDC, please feel free to chime in. You know, I think kind of some of the things that were mentioned where it sounded possibly like it was trying to be status quo. I think it was more just, we're not going to shake things up just for the sake of shaking things up. You know, we're not going to just do like a number switch just because, but we do want to use this opportunity to hear from the public, whether it's a big change or a small change. We can look at all of that. And if it fits that criteria that's outlined, again, first looking at the evening out the populations, and then those other criteria under the Fair Maps Act, then we can go ahead and make those considerations, even if it is a larger change. So I don't want to, and I think this is a really helpful conversation, because I don't want it to come across as just business as usual. We want to use this opportunity to see if we do have to look at some of those past boundaries that maybe shouldn't have been drawn a certain way. NDC, anything you want to add on that?
I would only encourage her to look at the community of interest form and see if there's something there that some answers you could provide, even though you've only been here a short time. and tell us what you think about your community, and then while looking at a map, telling us whether you think it fits with where it is or whether it should be somewhere else. That's the basics of what we're looking for.
Yeah, and also, to highlight the fact that this is supervisorial districts only. And we know that we have a lot of local districts that will be going through this same process. Some cities that will be going through this as well, obviously on the state level. So all of that is going to take a lot of looking at very closely. And, for our purposes for supervisorial districts, we really want to hear from those communities that might be impacted by certain county policies or services. Anything else on that front, NDC? Okay. There is a question about the, actually, sorry, I'll go back. I'll go to the phone. Any other phone calls in the queue?
We do not have any calls in queue at this moment.
Okay. Flo, you rock. That's not easy. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to the Q&A very quickly. Question, I'm curious of the data quality and the statistical confidence level of the data. NDC, is there anything you can speak to regarding the confidence of the data at this point? And I think too, actually, kind of Ms. Wells talked about that as well, where knowing that there's been a lot of movement, we obviously have to use the census data for what it is, whether good or bad, missing pockets. That's why the county went through a very large effort for the census to get as much good info as possible. But what are your thoughts on the confidence of the data?
Well, I'll start with what we think we're getting, and because Sacramento did put the effort in trying to get everybody to respond to the census, we believe that the census numbers that we'll see are fairly very accurate. And I'll let Doug Johnson speak to the demographic data, because it's not all based on what we responded to back in April of 2020 for the census, because the census over the last decade has been taking surveys, and a lot of that data has been incorporated into what you see in the database now. So I'll let Doug Johnson describe that.
Thanks. Yeah, I would say, if people are asking this from a statistical confidence of interval level, rather than getting into that tonight, I would just say, if you just Google American Community Survey, which is the Census Bureau program that provides it, and accuracy or confidence intervals, you'll get the Census Bureau's statistical numbers on how accurate it is. It is a survey. It's the biggest survey in the country every single year. They survey about 1 in 14 households nationwide over the course of 5 years. So it's the most accurate survey out there, but it's still a survey with margins of error and plus or minus a couple of percent without a doubt. And then people are fairly familiar with the challenges the Census Bureau faced, as Doug mentioned. The total population numbers are as good as we can make them. And the state has said that for cities and counties, we will use the 2020 census counts. There's no longer a question about sampling or editing the data beyond that.
Great, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's good to know the other sources, including the American Community Survey that has a lot of that like language information as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Flo, I'm going to check with you probably one more time before we close the phone line. I'll throw out that number, 916-875-2500. For any last minute calls or questions or just comments or suggestions. How do we make this sound interesting? How do we engage the community? We're definitely open to hearing that as well.
Just going to give it a few minutes, Courtney. As of right now, we do not have any public comments. I should say I was going to give it a few seconds just to see if anyone is coming through the queue.
Thank you, Flo. Okay.
And it looks like we do not have anyone in the queue.
Okay, so I think we will go ahead and close public comment. And there is a question regarding data release and the final redistricting. So, and I know Doug Yoakum, we got the two Dougs here, Doug and Justin. And, I know you mentioned, some of the timeline on your PowerPoint presentation. It is important to note too, on the redistricting website, there is also a public hearing and meeting timeline. But anything to say, or any maybe tidbits you have regarding when the data will be released? And then for our county, what are we looking at for a timeline?
The census data will be released on or around August 15th. Then, as I said, the state database has to do some correction of that data, or basically what they have to do is they have to take the prisons that are in the state and allocate those individuals to the communities that they came from. That's a state law, and they will do that, as well as make the data usable for all of our systems. So because the statewide database is the official database for state redistricting, they pass that information down to all cities and counties and small districts so they can do their redistricting. So that's how it's done. We estimate that around October 1st, the state will have completed their process, and we will have a database ready to use in Sacramento County that is the official database based on the census in Sacramento.
Great. So, okay, we did get some, let's see, other questions in. Insofar as ethnic or racial factors are considered, who does this impact multiracial and or multi-ethnic group populations within any population count within a boundary? I'm not sure if y'all can see that question. I'm not sure if I understand that question.
I can see it, but I don't understand it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm as well stumped on.
Okay. So, let's see. So maybe we can see if we can work on that question and come back with some information later.
There is another one there that I think I can answer. I'll
Okay.
read it and I'll try to come up with the answer. Many individuals identify as multiracial and or multi-ethnic, yet they prefer identifying as a single ethnic or racial group for a variety of reasons. For example, someone may have Irish grandparents and still prefer to identify themselves as Irish. How does this impact demographic data used? Ethnicities, I'll use Irish as an example. That's categorized as white. There are ethnicities that are identified as Asian, and there are some ethnicities, I'm sorry, I can't use that word, that identify as Hispanic or Latino. So that's how they will be classified in the census data that we receive. There's not much else I can say on that, because individual ethnicities will not be in our database to be able to be used. It's simply based on race.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much for that. And so I think that is it for our questions as well. So we're going to go ahead and close public comment at this time. We will be having another virtual workshop Wednesday morning. And then we will be having district workshops throughout the county as well to learn more, to hear more, get more questions. So there will be more opportunities to comment on the process. And then, of course, when the time comes to comment on the maps as well that NDC will be putting together for us. So in closing, a few things just to wrap up. That tonight's presentation and a summary of comments and any submissions will be made available online at the county's redistricting webpage at www.saccounty.net/redistricting. We welcome community input and comments, of course, and you can always submit them at redistricting@saccounty.net. And especially as you use the mapping tools, I think as even county staff starts to use the mapping tools, your feedback and thoughts and comments on that would be very much appreciated. We have that community of interest form that is available to use at any public meetings, events, neighborhood association meetings. Feel free to print that out and use that with your community or provide feedback on that form as well. And your comments, whether they are emailed, whether they're through the community of interest form, we will be posting them in their entirety on our website. So if there's sensitive information in there or like your exact address, you might want to leave that off because we will be adding that to our website. In addition, we also want to let our community know that we want your input also on the American Rescue Act plan. So American Rescue Plan Act. So we are accepting public feedback on how to use those funds in the County of Sacramento. So we have our website up on that on our COVID-19 webpage. So as you're looking at redistricting, you want to look at some American Rescue Act planning, please go ahead and take our survey that's there or provide any comments through arp@saccounty.net. And if you have other questions as we go through this process, you can contact us at 916-874-5451 or redistricting@saccounty.net. So I appreciate you all being here with us tonight. I appreciate our great ASL interpreters. Thank you so much for being here for NDC and for the public comments. That really does help us to improve, to work on outreach, education, and how we want to see this process be as transparent as possible moving forward. So thank you and hope to see you in future meetings. Have a great night.